Welcome back to another episode on the Hidden Why podcast. This is episode 1122, and I'm your host, Lee Marnuzzi. Thank you so much for joining us today with this interview with Georgie Collinson. We're talking about managing and mastering anxiety. I love this conversation because I think we can all put our hands up. At some point in our daily lives, we deal with anxiety, right? And sometimes, and she talks about high functioning anxiety and what that really looks like, how we can identify that we're dealing with anxiety. You know the feeling you get in your body. You're sort of all up in your mind. You're acting very subconsciously, lower levels of self-awareness or consciousness, dictating everything that you do in your day-to-day lives. And sometimes I've felt this myself. You might be observed as seeming like you're all in control, but underneath there's this building up level of anxiety. And what we tend to do is push it down and try and get rid of it. And as Georgie explains, it's not something that we can get rid of, but it's rather something that we should feel and then seek to understand. And she provides some practical tools on how we can manage this level of anxiety in our daily lives. And it's not that it's ever going to go away, but through practice and the tools that she shares, we can manage it better over a longer period of time. So it's a really cool conversation. Would love to know what you think. Have a listen to it. Make sure you connect with Georgie Collinson as well. Her links are in the show notes at thehiddenwhy.com. If you haven't yet subscribed to the podcast or to thehiddenwhy.com, jump online, subscribe on your favorite podcast player, like it there as well. And if you like this episode, make sure you share it with someone. Enjoy the episode. We'll talk at the other end. Hello, Georgie, and welcome to the Hidden Why podcast. Great to have you here today.
Hey Lee, I'm really excited to be here.
Not too far either. I'm up here on the Sunshine Coast and you're down there near Byron Bay. So
Yes, in the aftermath of our cyclone
yeah, what an event.
an interesting time.
It was. I always, I've talked to a lot of people over this period, and I was definitely feeling this way, that I had all these things I wanted to do with work as I normally do. But then the cyclone was there and everyone started talking about it, and it sort of just put everything on hold. And I just lost this sense of motivation. And on the topic of today, talking about your work, the anxiety reset method, I had a little bit of anxiety around it too. I don't know if you felt that way,
Mm.
but I know a lot of people I spoke to felt that way. And it's not until it passed after the rain dumped down on us and everything moved on until, Friday now, a few days later, that things seem back to normal and I
Yeah,
can rest a bit easier.
Yeah, that's definitely, it's an anxiety-inducing scenario, and there's so many people around you also getting into the fear, especially I think the anticipation beforehand was the most challenging part. So, yep, I was in it too with you, Lee, and I was using all my tools to master my anxious mind, which is how I put it, because it's not like anxiety is something we can just cut out of our brains, and get rid of, which so many of us are so determined to do.
Hmm.
And I fully understand that, because when you're in it, it's so urgent and it's so uncomfortable and you just want to, get relief as soon as possible. But what I help people to do is get to a place where the anxiety can come up from time to time and it's not a problem.
Hmm.
You have power over it rather than feeling like I can't possibly have this in my life because I am powerless to it. And there's a shift that happens. And then the natural side effect is that we experience much less anxiety. But yeah, it's a process, it's a journey.
100%. Anxiety on a whole, you talk about high functioning anxiety, right?
Yes.
What's the difference there between anxiety as I relate to it as just, the stress of everyday life as opposed to high functioning anxiety?
High functioning anxiety is best described, if I was really quick about it, as on the outside, everyone thinks you got it all together and you're pretty organized, you take care of yourself and the world around you, you get the tasks done. But on the inside, it's a very different story. And there's quite likely a mean critical voice in there that is placing tons of pressure on you. It's never good enough. You've never done enough. We've usually got perfectionism playing into that as well. Maybe we're caught in patterns of people pleasing. We say yes when we really wish we could say no. This is what characterizes high functioning anxiety, as opposed to, say, the anxiety where we're so paralyzed and debilitated that we're not even functioning in our lives.
Okay. So high functioning anxiety, is that something relatable only to high performing individuals or highly ambitious individuals?
It typically coincides with people who are highly ambitious and high
Yeah.
performing, partly because we're so high performing out of survival, right? Like it's coming from this place of if I don't get the best result, and if I don't achieve, and if I don't push myself and force, then it feels like we're going to die. It feels like we're a failure. It feels like that's it.
Mm.
So there's a level of that ambition that I see really commonly, actually,
Yeah.
that is coming from not really our authentic selves. It's coming from trying not to let down usually a parent, usually a caregiver, but all this stuff does go back to childhood and how we've
Yeah.
been conditioned. So the key becomes, what are these dreams and ambitions that I have? And can I, firstly, checking in with, is that even what I actually want? Like, let's say your family always wanted you to be a lawyer or a doctor, and you
Yeah.
find yourself in that career and you're like, I actually hate this,
Yeah.
right? Maybe you were good at it. Maybe you worked really hard. And eventually, that pressure cooker explodes, and we get to that point of I can't do this anymore. That's usually when people come find me, as some event happens, some crisis, and that's where we are forced by nature, by life, to reevaluate and come back to
Mm.
who we truly are. So the anxiety is a gift at the end of the day, and we can find a way to still achieve stuff in our lives, but without that sense of needing to, lest I die, lest I'm not worthy, and I have to prove myself. We can kind of do it from a place of, yeah, this is fun. I want to do that because I'm playing a game in this life, and let's see what happens, right?
Yeah.
There's less pressure in it.
Yeah. Okay. So tell us a little bit about your background and what got you into this field of dealing with anxiety and helping people deal with anxiety.
Well, like many who end up specializing in helping people with something, it was something I struggled with. And so for me, I was that classic kind of high achiever. In high school, it worked really well for me, the anxiety. And I
In what
didn't
way?
I didn't see it as a problem. Well, it made me study really hard. It made me very
Okay.
conscientious of curating my friendship group and making sure that I was thriving and I wasn't one of the ones being bullied at the bottom of the food chain, which I did experience, at one point. So
Yeah.
I climbed out of that, but it was all quite deliberate, and it served me well until I was 19, and my father left my mum very unexpectedly for a much younger woman. It was devastating to the whole family. This solid, foundation of family that I had thought was this rock in my life suddenly turned to quicksand overnight. And I was just like, how can this happen? How can life suddenly do this to you? And it was almost like worse that it happened when I was 19 as opposed to some earth-shattering event earlier in life. Like I was
Mm.
set up for that. And my
How did
anxiety
that make you feel when you went through that? Did it make you, like looking back, question who you were, or did it make you feel like it was your fault? Like, what were your feelings when that happened? Because that's a big
yeah,
shift for
it is a
19-year-old.
big, it is. And like from my dad's perspective at the time, it was like, well, you're an adult now, but you're still very much a child. You're still figuring out who you're meant to be and what
100%.
life is. And for me, yeah, I really did question like, was I not, fun enough? What does dad not love us enough to want to hang around with us? Were we not interesting enough? Which was a big wound that I had to go and explore
Yeah.
at a deeper level. And every morning I just wake up thinking, like, firstly, anxiety, and then this thought of something's gone terribly wrong here. And I just wanted it to all go back to how it was. And I really struggled with that for like a number of years, actually. It took me a
Yeah.
long time to process, to work my way through. So then my perfectionism spiraled into a whole new level of controlling what I was eating, trying to get the perfect diet, the perfect body. Maybe then I'll be happy and safe was the sort of rationale. And that led me into studying naturopathy, which was great because
Mm.
but it came from, my own wounds. And every time I heard about nervous system herbs, calming anxiety, stress, lowering cortisol, my ears would prick. It was just the thing that I loved to learn about. And I ultimately found a lot of answers for myself. So I started working with women with anxiety from that perspective. But then I realized there was only so far I could take people. You know, I could give them all the magnesium, I could give them all the right foods, for example. And there's deeper stuff, right? We know
Yeah.
this. There's
Yeah.
traumas, there's self-sabotage patterns. So I
Mm.
studied further and I learnt how to work with the subconscious mind, which is the realm of all the things we don't know that we don't know about ourselves, all the deep fears, all the patterns that drive us and make us the way we are. And that is an endlessly fascinating world. And that's where I can get really deep results for people and got to create something that was had more answers than what we were being offered with traditional therapy models. You know, I just wanted to really help people fast track that process
Yeah.
and it's so beneficial for me. So that's where we are now. That's
Do
what
you
I've
work one-on-one with people now, helping people with their anxiety in general?
I do, yes.
Yeah.
And we work through a 4 month program where people actually get to graduate from me. So we're not working for 10 years. We're going around in circles and look at, oh, there's another thing that you're doing wrong. And there's another pattern, another reason you're broken. I'm actually saying, okay, let's see that pattern and
Yeah.
work through it. And how can we actually help that pattern resolve for you so that it doesn't keep playing out? Which is constantly what I hear people wanting. You know, it's like we see all the stuff, you know, maybe we've read the self-help books, but where we don't know the how of getting through. And it's not an intellectual process. It's something we have to feel and experience.
Right.
And I think that's the part that is such a kicker because we just want to think our way out of it. But that doesn't always work.
So, like a set of tools to deal with that. You sort of mentioned at the start, but a set of tools to deal with anxiety as it comes up again and again. And as we get better at using those tools, then anxiety obviously depletes and we become better at handling when it does come up because we're going to experience anxiety at any given time in our life along the way, right? Like you have a serious incident where your parents split up or you go through a separation or your parent dies, whatever it might be. There can be trauma and crises that bring around those feelings that cause then that anxiety.
Yes.
So your 12-week program is really about helping people get the tools so they can deal with that ongoing.
Exactly, because if we're trying to, if our goal, just think about it, is to be calm forever, well, you're not really alive. You're not really here in life because
Yeah.
imagine going through a cyclone and you're sitting there just perfectly calm through the whole thing. You're not really feeling and amongst life. And so
Well, I wonder if Gandhi would do that.
well, this is the question too. You know, I've really gone deep on these big spiritual leaders. They're still human. You know, they still have the fears. They still have the ego, the mind, but they have created an ability to sort of detach from that and allow those feelings, those experiences of humanness to
To
pass
flow.
through.
Hmm.
Yeah, without hating on it, without saying, I can't possibly have this in my experience. And that's really where we get the calm. It's okay, there's this part of me that's scared that I've been so good at dismissing and saying, I hate you, go away. What if I actually brought it closer to me? What if
Hmm.
I said, oh, this scared part, and I saw it like a little child? Because lots of this is reparenting work. And just think about when you do feel really anxious and triggered, doesn't it feel like you're a little child all of a sudden? Like you've forgotten that you
Hmm.
are a capable adult, and we're just in this mode of, oh, I've got to, I don't know what's going on, and I'm really confused, and everything's scary. That's because we've been temporarily hijacked by a past version of ourselves, a little child that was scared and
Hmm.
had some kind of unmet need. So when the anxiety comes up, we have this opportunity to meet that part of ourselves. And just think if you meet that part with like go away, which is what most of us do, if we tell that scared little child to go away, is that going to make the child feel better?
Hmm.
No, it's going to make them
Yes.
feel so the anxiety gets worse. But
Yeah.
if we meet it with softness, with gentleness, and we say, "Oh, I'm gonna get on your level. I'm gonna understand you." And you know what? You can feel afraid. Like it's understandable you feel afraid. You're just a kid. Well, I've got you. I'm with you. That's where we start to experience relief. And that is, kind of what those spiritual leaders are doing in a sense, because they're watching the fear move through their body, but they're not reacting to it like this is the end of the world. It's a pure
Hmm.
acceptance of this is what it means to be human.
Yeah, so not blocking it, but letting it flow through and feeling it. I think that's, come up time and time again in interviews with people that you need to let it you need to feel it. You need to be aware and have that self-awareness and let that emotion and feeling flow through so you can better understand it and therefore manage it rather than just blocking it, which is going to,
Yes.
like you said, aggravate it and make it potentially worse. I sort of smirk when you're saying that because I'm just thinking, we see that little child when we're feeling that anxiety, but a lot of our anxiety in this day and age, I feel, is created because we try to be too adult and
Mm,
too in control, and we've got all these things that we've got to do, and we've got these expectations that we've got to live to. It's never enough. We get to
yeah.
one area of our life and then we go, okay, what now? I'm going to move on to this next one, rather than just being calm about treating life as, like you said, a bit of a journey and a bit of a game.
Yeah. And, in that trying so hard to be this adult that's got it all sorted, we're going to totally abandon the part of us that is worried that we don't have it sorted, that we're
Mm,
not cool. And we all have that part of us. There's
yeah.
always going to be a part that's like, I'm not too sure. I'm just putting on a smile and pretending I know what I'm doing. And no one talks about that, right? We're all just
Mm,
showing up, we're fumbling our way through, but that part is still there. And if we don't acknowledge it and we're not okay with it because we think, oh no, if that's there, that means something's terribly wrong with me. And maybe it is real that I'm just this incapable person deep down that I've got to keep pushing down. That's we start this like big battle within ourselves, and that's going to breed more self-doubt, more powerlessness over time. The more we just try to keep
yeah.
being a serious adult, so we have to at times like let ourselves have the breakdown, let ourselves collapse, let ourselves say, I don't know what's happening right now, and I don't know who I am and what I'm doing, because you're not going to stay in that.
Mm,
Just going to be a moment of your life. And the cool thing is, as you move through that experience, you come out the other side and you're like, oh, okay, I got more space now. I can keep coping with life now.
yeah.
But we never let that moment of surrender happen. We're just like I call it like a volcano waiting to erupt. We're just
Yeah.
up with emotional energy that we're not releasing. And eventually that volcano will erupt and we'll have maybe panic attacks, or we'll get burnt out, or we'll have a health crisis. Or anxiety suddenly out of the blue in our 40s, when I've spent my whole life not feeling anxious. That happens for people a lot. And they think, oh, it's just, if it's women, they think it's perimenopause. And it's like, yeah, that's part of it, but it's not the whole story. Like, this is all a
Mm.
part of you that you've been so good at keeping the lid on that is now coming out for you to see and
Yeah, well,
love.
you obviously meet a lot of people that go through this. Um, and I wonder what courage they must have to come through and actually speak to someone like yourself, because I've dealt with it and I deal with it and I bottle it like the volcano, I guess, until it erupts and then I let out rather than just talking about my feelings. I'm quite vulnerable and open generally, right? But I'm that high performer as well. That feels like I've just got to keep going and be brave and keep battling. And it's never enough. So I've got to do more. And that obviously burns me out and builds up to levels of anxiety, which I can't then deal with. And sometimes it blows.
Yeah. Yeah. And just what you said, the bravery it takes for someone to say, you know what, even though I'm so scared that I'm going to be shut down for seeking out support, or that it means something terrible about me, that I'm weak, that I actually can't cope, um, that there is a level of that step that people need to take that I wish I could help them take. I wish I could hold their hand through that. But there's this part of the people that do want to work with anxiety, rather than, we can stay in these patterns if we want to. We don't have to. No one's forcing you to.
Yeah.
But those who do, it's like there's always this part of you that is determined for growth, determined to be better, determined to rise above the challenge that you're going through. And that's usually the thing that gets people taking that first step and saying, yeah, I'm going to take a look at this. Because gosh, when you start going on that journey, like I'm what I'm already saying, right? It's scary, some of the things that I'm talking about, going into these emotions, allowing them to be there. But it takes you end up later down the track actually feeling grateful for the anxiety, for the challenges you've been through, because of the person it carves you into. It awakens a deeper, more authentic confidence,
Mm, mm,
or more authentic self-worth. You're not you can own all those parts of you.
yeah.
You're not afraid of the part that's human.
Well, I think that's right. Like anxiety, if it gets to that level where it's just never ending, and maybe you get over it and it comes back, and you get over it and it comes back, you might get to a point where you just stop and give up and not pursue those beautiful things, your dreams that you have in life. And that you probably find that a lot with people, right?
Yeah, and
And
that's the learned helplessness that comes from childhood too. So
mm,
we get hijacked by this part of us that was once a child, where just think about it, children are really dependent on, did I get parents that get me and are here for me and supportive and get on my level and understand me? Or did I get parents who are not willing to like understand me and really deeply connect with me, who don't know what to do with emotions, who are maybe emotionally volatile themselves and set really strict rules. Like if that's your house that you grow up in as a child, you ain't got a choice. You have to stay there in that scary environment, and eventually we give up. We're like, well, I can't do anything. And then as an adult, we're going to have that same mentality. I'm powerless in my life. I've got no choice. Whereas when we're adults, we actually do have a choice. Now you can
mm,
earn money.
mm,
Now you can choose where you live, hopefully, now you can choose the people that are around you. You can make those choices, maybe not overnight, but you can start to incrementally shift things and improve your life. And that's why a lot of people's lives get better and better
yeah.
as we grow up, because we can make those choices. So yeah, that powerlessness is a key one to point out, that it's still that inner child hijacking us temporarily.
Well, I think it's, you sort of say you can't give people the courage to go out there and talk about their anxiety, but I think if you can recognize that you have anxiety, and maybe we can talk about what sort of feelings come up with anxiety, because your body is aware, obviously, when you do feel that. But if you are having those feelings and you have a level of awareness, you'll see that as a roadblock to your progression. And I really believe that we all strive in everything that we do to reach a deeper level of happiness in life.
Mm.
And if that anxiety is blocking us from doing that, um, maybe it's a sign to have that courage and go, you know what? I don't want that to block me from doing that, because that's really important. And I believe that it's important for absolutely everyone listening to this.
Yes.
So we can encourage people to talk about anxiety, whether it's with you or with, people in their circles, and have those vulnerable conversations. And I
Yeah.
think more and more of that's happening today.
Yeah, it is. And I have to say, Lee, like if anyone here is listening that, you think you can't talk about anxiety, because it's very common to think you're the only one that's experiencing this. But my goodness, like whether people around you admit it or not, there is so much anxiety. The stats are 1 in 4 Australians. It
More
has to
than
be
ever, right?
higher. It has to be higher than that, because not everyone's going and getting the official diagnosis. But let's talk about those symptoms. You're experiencing that you're living life mostly in your mind, and you notice that huge chunks of time go by where you have not really been aware of your physical body. Maybe you forgot that you're hungry. Maybe you're just not noticing that there are feelings in here, and that's very common. Or if you are noticing the feelings because they're getting really uncomfortable, we might have a racing heartbeat. We might have like a churning feeling in the gut. We might have a sense of nausea is a really common one, or not hungry. Um, it could go either way with appetite. It
Mm,
can sometimes increase, and that's a kind of coping mechanism to eat and self-soothe that way. We may notice that we're going into those unhealthy coping mechanisms. Maybe we're using alcohol every day to try and bring down that tense feeling, the tight neck and shoulders, the jaw clenching, and the mind gets lost in rumination. So these are some of the things that will tell us we're experiencing that anxiety. And you
mm.
can have all of that going on and still show up, be on the work meeting, smile at someone down the street. We often think it means you're going to be sitting crouched in a corner having a panic attack, and it could be that, but most often you just don't see it in the people around you. We're so oblivious that so many of us are struggling with this behind the smile, behind the, yep, I've got this, I've got it sorted.
Yeah, I know the
Yeah.
feeling. I can
Mm.
definitely relate.
Yeah.
Um, when you say I think you said you're sort of more in your head a lot of the time with anxiety. But would that mean like not consciously? Because I imagine with higher anxiety, you're sort of living subconsciously and you're not quite aware, and
Yeah.
therefore you're not connected to your feelings, and i.e., if you're feeling hungry or not.
Yeah.
And
That's it.
potentially that's why time passes too, because you're sort of on autopilot.
That's right. It's very unconscious, and without our conscious awareness, we will live in our heads. We'll live in our mind. We'll be worrying about every problem that occurs. We'll think we're not good enough. Our mind will continually find problems. And that's not something that is fixable about the human condition, right?
Mm,
That is part of being a human. You will have a mind. It will always find problems. It will always tell you on some level there's something not good enough about you. The trick is, how much power do we give that mind? And there's this other part of us that is observing our mind that can notice what the mind is doing
mm,
and pull our focus and awareness back into our body. And this is kind of like one of the key sort of portals of healing here is if we can watch our feelings in our body, the sensations here, and just notice them, we connect to a very calm part of us that's always there, this grounded presence that is just watching our experience. And then you get to choose, well, what thought do I want to think now? Like, I'm telling myself that, I'm doomed right now, or that there's a terrible urgency to do this thing, or that, like not good enough in some way. Is that
mm.
true? You can really come back to this part of yourself and like look at those thoughts, question the stories you're telling yourself, because most of it is total BS. And you can actually now choose, okay, what thought do I want to tell myself?
Yeah.
Start to take more conscious command of what that mind is doing.
Mm. So meditation, I assume, is one of the tools we can help people create that deeper level of awareness. Would that be the first step for you with your patients, telling them to, hey, let's, find some quiet time, reflect?
It is in a sense. Okay,
Yeah.
so the thing with meditation is we get really frustrated real quick, especially
Yeah.
with high functioning anxiety. Like we'll sit there, we'll do, okay, I'm going to do a meditation. All right. Finally, we've found the motivation to do it. We're going to sit down, we're going to pull ourselves out of the busy day. And we're 30 seconds in and we're thinking, I hate this. My mind is racing so fast. So sometimes what we actually need is to help some of that energy to move before we can actually get still. And so breath work
Right.
is incredible. Like this is why I love breath work, because you're able to sort of help metabolize a lot of energy. Like a really simple breath that we can do is one big breath in, then you take an extra sip of air, really fully inflate the lungs, hold it for 10 seconds, and then sigh it out. It's called the physiological sigh, and it helps move some of that energy so that, okay, now it's feeling a little easier to sit there in this stillness.
So when you say
Um,
side out, you mean like kind of like,
yes,
yeah?
if you can make some sound as you breathe out, you don't have to, but you're also creating a vibration on your vagus nerve in your throat, which is why singing, chanting, in yoga, they chant.
Mm,
People roll their eyes at that, but I love it. I'm like, oh, when I've got an opportunity to chant Om, I'm going to chant as loud as I can because it's triggering our vagus nerve, which sends us into a relaxed state. It
right.
helps the body move from that intense activation into something more still and relaxed. So it's really great for us to do. It could be that before we can drop into meditation, or the meditation is almost like a portal in to notice what we're feeling, and we actually might need to cry. We might
Yeah.
need to release some tears. We might need to scream into a pillow. And this is an interesting one because for men, usually we're totally allowed to yell and scream and be angry. We do that at the footy. We do that watching the rugby. Like there's a lot of outlets to be angry in that way. And even possibly, if you're going through frustration at home, you might just kind of like yell about something.
Yeah.
Whereas women, whilst yes, there are obviously women who yell, it's more taboo. So a lot of women repress and keep the anger in because we don't want to look crazy, which is what will be called if we express anger. And then women are much more allowed to be emotional and cry and have tears, and men typically hold that in because it's not manly. So these are the sort of different spaces we need to work with. A lot of men need to be allowing some of that energy to move, not just through yelling and yelling at the sport. Hopefully, is
Yeah.
like the
Yeah.
healthiest ways we have. But just letting a couple of tears fall every now and then, like, and dropping into the sensitive heart that's actually, of course, is there. Like there's a little
Yeah.
boy, every man. And for the women, it's like, damn, we've got a lot of anger. We are so angry about the oppression, that we went through. And if we can allow ourselves to let that anger release, now we get to be soft and gentle and loving to the people around us.
Mm.
And there's this pressure release. And yes, there's crying that women need to do as well, because often women are repressing it too. But
Yeah,
it's
so we've got that masculine and feminine energy in all of us.
yes,
Yet obviously men use the more masculine approach to deal with things and vice versa.
that's right. Being a man in
You
this world
got to
is
tap
different.
into the yeah,
It's different to being a woman in the world, right? Like we get
yeah.
different messages about who we have to be and what we're allowed to be. As much as we
Mm.
like to pretend that everything's equal and oh, you're just a human, you're still experiencing the life through that experience of gender. So yeah, it's a whole thing. So getting that emotional energy moving is a huge part as well of, you'll notice as soon as, like, it can take sometimes 3 minutes to just drop into, actually, I'm really sad right now, and letting some tears move. And
Yeah.
then, oh my goodness, like the relief. Now I've got space. Now I can meditate. So
Yeah, well, you change your physiology. Like, I think that breath work's a great thing to do on the spot if you're feeling, that's not going to take a long time. But I think that raises a really good point that helps me, and that's just going for a swim or going for a walk or moving the body. And I think that's why in the morning doing it every day is a really good ritual.
yeah, for
And I
sure.
always do that before I come into meditation.
Perfect. Because think about, if you have a dog, right? Dogs need walks every day. If you've ever had a dog,
Yeah, I
and if you
do.
don't take them, if you don't take them for a walk, they're going to start chewing the shoes or scratching the door. Like, you're going to get some trouble because their energy needs to move, and they can get quite anxious. Well, we're the same. Like, we're not meant to sit. If your body is saying move, 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 because we're in that flight response, we need to flee, we need to move, or fight, which is, I need to, again, still a call to take action and
Yeah,
move.
yeah,
It's much easier to go with that as opposed to going against what your body's asking, which is like, oh, I've got to keep that in, just pretend that's not there, and I'm just going to be still and peaceful and calm. Much easier after you've, yeah, gone for a swim, go for a walk, get it out, and then come back. And you'll be much better primed there to be in that calmer state where now you can witness what's happening in the body. You can witness the thoughts. What stories are you telling yourself? Much easier from that place.
yeah, cool. You've got obviously a lot of tools in this 12-week program that you run to help people go through this. Um, I think meditation and self-awareness is great. And I was just having another chat with another lady about burnout and stress and all that sort of thing. And I think it's one of those, maybe 12 weeks is fair, but I also feel that there's so many different modalities of meditation and mindfulness and awareness that you really need to play around with it and just trial and error it. Because it's going to be different for everyone and what works for you and comfort and where you're at right now. And can you spend 2 minutes doing some breath work, or could you spend a half an hour sitting there and omming?
Yeah, spot on, Lee. And we're all, the authority in our lives, like, to figure out what the best recipe is for ourselves. Like, we all want someone to just say, do this, like, do these
Hmm.
three things, and now you're fixed. But so my work's really a bit of a tasting platter. We get to
Yeah.
try. I encourage everyone to try one or like everything. Try it at least once or
Yeah.
twice, even
Yeah.
if it's uncomfortable. Because there are some uncomfortable things. Like, some of the things I get people to do is like write a letter to yourself that's purely kind and loving, telling yourself like all the positive attributes you can see in who you are, not just
Geez, yeah, I should try that. That's a good one.
not just what you've achieved as well. Like, what about the person that you are? What about the being that you are, the
Mm.
enoughness in you? That's a real challenge for a lot of people. But I
Yeah.
try it because that's a level of discomfort that's going to help you grow, and it's going to be something that's beneficial. But I also encourage people to try like cold water therapy. So having your regular hot shower, then have 30 seconds of cold at the end. Now, some people love that. I love it because I see multiple benefits. There's the physical benefit. It cuts through that rumination in the mind because it's such a
Mm.
shock. It brings you back into your body. You can't help but feel your body. It's also activating the vagus nerve, so you're calming yourself that way too. But there's a mindset component of, this is uncomfortable, but I can do it. and you show yourself you can do it, and you can start working with your thoughts around it too, rather than saying, oh, I'm not a cold person, I could never do cold, this isn't for me. But yeah, some people really embrace that and love it. Some people, they do give it a go, but it's just not their thing, and that's also okay,
Yeah.
right? It's not like if they don't do that, they'll never experience any relief. Maybe we just try something else,
Yeah.
There's
Well, it's
always
more the
something.
foundations, I suppose, setting those foundations up and then trying different things within each of those that
That's
works
right.
for you.
That's right. Yeah. But if we're not taking care of ourselves with sleep, if we're not feeding
Mm,
ourselves regular meals and enough protein for stable blood sugar and things like that, like yeah, those things are gonna have an impact. That's gonna be hard to get around
mm,
for anxiety if we're still ignoring the parts of ourselves that are calling for our love and our acceptance. It's going to be hard to get around. But then there are those bonuses, like these sort of, okay, here's a tool that's going to get you feeling more grounded right now. That's where we've got a lot of room to play.
What do you think the biggest issue that we're facing right now as far as anxiety in our society is concerned?
Loneliness,
Okay.
disconnection.
Yeah.
I think that if we could organize ourselves as human beings in a way where we were in these supportive groups where the pure aim was, how can we get a collective win here? How can we get everyone getting what they need? And not
Mm,
just like, here's the money you need, here's the food you need. What about here's the love and care you need too? And it's never too much what you're asking.
mm,
Uh, that would be huge, but we're so far from that, right? We got more people than ever living alone. We have a real push for this independence, hyper independence, like you do have to do it all on your own. And that's really hurting us, because we are tribal beings, and we still haven't figured out the formula yet for how can we as a collective humanity see, like, meet what we need as a group, and
mm,
meet what most of the individuals need, so that we can all benefit and thrive, as opposed to what we have now, which is a win-lose dynamic. I win and you have, like, for me to win, you have to lose. I'm going to get my way, you're not going to get your way,
mm.
uh, which is very unfortunate, but doesn't have
Yeah.
to be that way.
Yeah, I think that's, the connection piece is huge. And how we create more connection, I'm not sure. But I think creating space in silence and time, and switching things off when we're with people, very important.
Yeah.
And I think about this myself because I'm a busy person and I like to be busy. But
Mm.
if I can just switch off for 15 minutes or half an hour and not look at anything, and it's very uncomfortable, right?
Mm.
And we've got such a attention deficit disorder now where we have to be constantly checking in and getting that dopamine hit. To be able to put that down for 15 minutes and connect with the person that you're with is uncomfortable, but the health benefits of it are much more significant.
Yeah, yeah. And Lee, we're doing it right now. Like, this is connection.
Yeah.
Actually, like, taking a moment to pause and actually talk about the deeper stuff that's going
Mm,
on. Imagine if in that moment where you're sitting next to someone, let's say it's a family member or a close friend, and you put the phone down, you say, oh, I feel really uncomfortable trying to put my phone down right now. Imagine actually sharing that, because chances are the other person's also on their phone and they're like, oh, I feel weird putting mine down too.
mm,
And now we've come back to connection. But it takes being able to connect with yourself to then be able to, relay that information to the other person. It takes that self-reflection.
yeah.
So this is where there is, this message of, you've got to know yourself first, or love yourself first before you can, love and connect with others. But I think that message has gotten skewed into, isolate yourself and go off and do your inner work, and only come back when you're perfect to be loved. And then you can kind of participate with others, where it's much more of a dance. It's much more of a coming back to self, looking out at the others, talking to them, coming back to yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Generally, we're all in it together. We all have, in our own unique ways, different levels of anxiety and different things we're dealing with. And
Yeah.
we all have the society we live in. So everything that's coming at us is coming at all of us. So
Yeah.
it's kind of cool to talk about it.
Yeah, this is
Um,
what I mean. Like, we can talk about it because we're all going through it. If you are struggling, or like you feeling the intensity and the pressure of, like, damn, life is a lot. Like, chances are, random person down the street getting a coffee next to you at the cafe, like, they're going through that too.
Mm,
Just imagine what it would be like if I know it would be possibly feel uncomfortable or weird, but like imagine if we did look that person in the eyes, like the stranger, and just actually say like something a bit more meaningful, like how are you going? How's life?
mm,
you, life's crazy at the moment. That's why it's nice when we go through something like a big cyclone, because did you notice we could all suddenly connect on a mutual challenge we're all going through?
mm.
And it wasn't weird to say something to the stranger because it was
Yeah.
like, yeah, oh, did you get much flooding at your place? We
Mm,
could actually talk.
yeah.
So, yeah.
There's opportunities everywhere for deeper conversations, and I do appreciate your conversation today here on the podcast, Georgie. Thank you for coming on. Where can people reach out to you, connect? What's the best avenues there?
The best place to find me, I hang out most on Instagram at Georgie the Naturopath, but you can also check out my website, georgiecollinson.com. There's some free resources and things there, and you can dive into my world. Let's connect.
It's awesome. Guys, I'll put all the show notes in the link at thehiddenwhy.com, including the book. So pick up a copy because I know 1 in 4 or more are dealing with anxiety. So it's probably a beneficial read to go through that. Connect with Georgie online as well. Link to a website, Instagram there on thehiddenwhy.com. Georgie, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you, Lee. It's been a pleasure, really.
Guys listening, live more fully, have more meaning, fun with joy. Talk soon. There you have it, guys. Another great episode here on the Hidden Why podcast. I hope you enjoyed it. And as always, I'd love your feedback. And I'm sure our guest, Georgie, would love your feedback as well. Links for her in the show notes, her website, Instagram, etc. And you can pick up a copy of her book there as well. And that also supports the show. I'd love your feedback, so make sure you share it with us. If you haven't yet subscribed, make sure you jump on thehiddenwhy.com and subscribe to our emailing list there. And depending on what podcast player you're listening to this, like it, share it. That would be appreciated as well. Anxiety is something that we all, some point in time, deal with. And I think it's a conversation starter, this episode. So when you're next meeting with your friends, talk about it, because I'm sure everyone can relate and everyone has a story of their own. And by talking about it, we can better understand it. That's the first part of self-awareness, is by taking the courage to just address it and feel it and acknowledge it. And like Georgie says, not to get rid of it, but to let it flow through. And in that sense, we can probably better deal with it. So hope you enjoyed this one, guys. Until the next episode, live more fully, have more meaning, and find more joy. Talk soon.